480 BC. Across a single narrow gorge, 300 warriors raised their shields against an army of 100,000. They did not retreat, not a single step. At that very moment, on the other side of the world, a war was raging in which 400,000 men would be buried alive.
Go back and tell them, here, obedient to their laws, we lie.
War killed the gods, and from the ruins, humanity's first thinkers were born. The simultaneous collapse of Bronze Age civilizations we witnessed in Part 2 remains one of history's greatest mysteries. But there is one solid clue, a presence known as the Sea Peoples. Around 1200 BC, unidentified seafaring tribes swept across the Mediterranean coast, burning every city in their path. The iron chariots of the Hittites were shattered, the walls of Ugarit crumbled, and the Lion Gate of Mycenae was swallowed by flames. And yet, who these sea peoples actually were, no one has ever been able to determine. During the same period in the East, the Shang dynasty fell and the Zhou dynasty rose, but Zhou authority quickly began to crumble as well. The age of the gods was over. Humanity was left standing barehanded on the ruins. It was then that a new metal emerged from deep within the earth, harder than bronze and far more abundant. Iron. This metal shattered the monopoly of kings. In a world where anyone could now wield a sword, war transformed from the privilege of nobles into the daily reality of every human being. And from within this extreme chaos, humanity's greatest thinking began to explode. In the 5th century BC, the Persian Empire marched toward Greece with the largest army the world had ever seen. Xerxes, the king of kings. His forces numbered well over 100,000.
My army's arrows will blot out the sun. For Greece, this shall be the last sunrise.
The gorge of Thermopylae. 300 Spartan warriors unfurled their crimson cloaks and locked into phalanx formation. Bronze shields formed a wall, and spear tips over 2 meters long filled the mouth of the gorge. At that instant, the Persian horde came flooding in. 3 days of slaughter. The gorge was carpeted with corpses, and all 300 fell in battle. But those 3 days bought Athens the time it needed, and at the Battle of Salamis, Persia was annihilated. After the victory, Athens began a strange experiment, a nation governed directly by its citizens. Citizens gathered in the square, raised their hands to create laws, and carved names onto shards of pottery to banish tyrants. Those who had bled together on the battlefield now began to rule their nation together. And in one corner of that agora, a barefoot man stopped every passerby and hurled questions at them.
What is justice? Do you truly know what you claim to know? Prove it.
Socrates. He taught nothing. He dismantled his opponents with questions alone. The powerful man of Athens grew uncomfortable. Eventually, a cup of poison was handed to him. But he did not run. It was the moment the first human being chose death for the sake of truth. His student Plato burned with rage and began drafting the blueprint for an ideal state. Plato's own student Aristotle set out to classify all things in existence. 3 generations of thought became the root of 2,500 years of Western civilization. But here is where it gets chilling. At that very same moment, on the other side of the planet, blood and philosophy were boiling over simultaneously. In the 8th century BC, as Zhou authority collapsed, China was torn apart into hundreds of warring states. From the spring and autumn period into the warring states era, an age where, quite literally, only war existed. 260 BC, the Battle of Changping. The armies of Qin and Zhao, 1 million soldiers combined, collided head-on. Iron spears and swords clashed, chariot wheels crushed the dead beneath them, and the earth was soaked in blood. It was the largest battle of the ancient world. The outcome was horrific. 400,000 Zhao prisoners who had surrendered were buried alive.
留下敌人的种子，必成后患。40万全部坑杀，这就是战争。
From within this ultimate brutality, paradoxically, humanity's greatest thinkers emerged. Confucius wandered the realm for 14 years, searching for an answer to the shattered order, but no ruler would accept him. Where Socrates shook the world with questions, Confucius stepped forward with an answer. Ren, benevolence.
人而爱人，是为仁也。此一字，足以正天下。
Laozi was the exact opposite. He rejected everything artificial and taught that one should live like water. Sun Tzu perfected philosophy on the battlefield. With the paradox that the supreme art of war is to win without fighting, he pierced the very essence of conflict. In India, a prince abandoned his palace and walked into the forest.
Suffering has a cause. Remove the cause and suffering ceases. This is the path I have realized.
Greece sought to save humanity through reason, China through morality, India through self-awareness. What we have seen so far is already a staggering coincidence. But the story does not end here. Because there is a third continent that no one has been paying attention to. A world that never crossed the Atlantic or the Pacific, completely cut off from Eurasia, the Americas. In the 6th century BC, deep in the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, the Maya were raising pyramids of limestone. Maya warfare was utterly unlike that of Greece or China. The goal was not to kill the enemy, but to capture them. Prisoners were offered to the gods at the summit of the pyramids, a ritual known as Star Wars.
Solo cuando las estrellas se alineen iniciarás la guerra. La sangre del prisionero alimentará al sol.
And then, these same Maya accomplished something unbelievable. Without telescopes, they calculated the Earth's orbital period as 365.2420 days. The modern scientific measurement is 365.2422 days. A margin of error of 0.00021. That is a difference of just 1.7 hours per millennium. How was this even possible? A civilization with no metal, no wheels, and no glass lenses achieved this level of precision. On top of that, the Maya independently discovered the concept of zero.
Las estrellas no mienten. En su ciclo leemos el fin y el comienzo del tiempo.
While Greece was inventing philosophy and China was inventing morality, the Maya were inventing mathematics. The Maya city-state system bore a striking resemblance to the Greek polis. Independent cities with their own kings formed alliances and waged war against one another. Three civilizations that had no knowledge of each other's existence produced the same structures and asked the same questions. Is this mere coincidence? Or is it a pattern written into the very DNA of the human species? In 1949, the German philosopher Karl Jaspers gave this phenomenon a name: the Axial Age. From 800 BC to 200 BC, 600 years in which the human spirit exploded simultaneously across the globe. How would you interpret this synchronicity? Leave your own hypothesis in the comments. To this day, scholars have proposed 3 hypotheses. First, the iron hypothesis. Iron increased agricultural productivity, freeing people from the struggle for survival and creating room for full-time thinkers to emerge. But the Maya had no metal. This hypothesis collapses in the face of the Maya. Second, the urbanization hypothesis. Population density breeds conflict, and conflict triggers thought. It is true that all 3 continents developed city-states during this period. Third, the most provocative hypothesis of all. The claim that when the human species reaches a certain stage of civilization, it inevitably undergoes a mental leap. Much like a child who one day suddenly begins to ask, "Who am I?"
Man by nature desires to know. Everything in the world has a cause, and finding that cause is the beginning of knowledge.
Whichever explanation is correct, the results of this resonance live on inside us today. Western democracy and logic were born in a blood-stained agora. Eastern Confucianism and Taoism sprouted in the dust of the battlefield. Maya. Mathematics and astronomy became the foundation of ancient American civilization. Humanity produced its greatest ideas during its most brutal age of war. Blood-forged wisdom. But this intellectual abundance would awaken yet another monster. Because empires began to emerge, wielding the ideas of the sages as weapons, seeking to devour entire continents. The Iron Legions of Qin Shi Huang unified China. The legions of Rome swallowed the Mediterranean. And on the American continent, unknown to anyone, a colossal city called Teotihuacan began to rise. The population of 120,000, the 6th largest city in the world at the time. 3 suns that knew nothing of each other rose simultaneously. An age when 3 empires blazed across the earth at once. We will meet again in part 4, 3 suns. The Greece of reason, the China of order, the Maya of observation. Which resonates with you the most? If you leave your choice in the comments, then this very dialogue will become a small resonance of the Axial Age. The resonance continues.
If you felt that satisfying chill, hit like, subscribe, and follow the signal.